Hello everybody. So today we are going to be going over geothermal energy and heating with its impacts on the environment. My name is Brian Swift and it's going to be pretty interesting. We're going to go over different environmental concerns, how it can affect different areas, financial concerns, and also some of the inner workings of geothermal heating. So let's get into this. Alright. First, let's go over what is geothermal energy and heating, going through different parts of how it works so that we can get a good understanding of what the impacts of it can be to you, the environment, and also different financial areas. So, first, geothermal heating is the change from taking steam that is in the surface of the earth and using it to create energy. This is done by taking hot water within the surface of the earth, as seen in the diagram to the right at 1, where it basically pumps up water through a drilling site into a heat pump. This heat pump then increases the temperature and creates steam from the hot water. From there, the steam is then inserted into the turbine. With that, the turbine will start turning and start making mechanical energy that can then be turned into an energy source within the generator. With that, it starts creating some power that can be sent to energy lines, which is a very interesting and fun system. After that, the leftover steam and water is then circled or recycled into the cooling tower, as seen in part 4 of that figure. From that cooling tower, it will then cause the water to basically dry down and then have it re-injected into Earth's surface, into a reservoir, so that it can be cooled and then used again for another geothermal energy heating. And then with that, we're going to be going over some of the 3 different types of geothermal heating, which include a dry steam plant, a flash plant, and also a binary plant. But in that, we'll be going over the power plants. Let's get into it. Alright, in our next section for geothermal power plants, we're going to be going over the 3 types of plants, as said before, between dry steam, flash, and binary, as seen in the figures down below. Each of them have very interesting systems and ways of creating power. First, let's go with dry steam power. Dry steam power plants take the steam from under the Earth's surface and then sends it right into the power plant, and then directly into a turbine and then generator to create power. This can be seen on the most left figure, where it takes the steam from the Earth's surface and has it start powering this turbine that then is hooked to a generator. The steam leftovers are then reinserted back into the Earth, where it will be placed back into the reservoir to be reused again, which is a bit different than our other 2 methods. Alright, let's go over our next type of power plant. This is going to be the flash steam power plant, as seen in the middle. It takes water from the Earth's surface and places it into a flash tank with cooler water temperatures. From the difference in the pressures, it creates steam within the water that is then cycled into the turbine, as seen in the picture, and then the turbine will then turn to create energy within the generator. After the steam is used, it will be then reinserted back into the plant, as seen there. This is a really interesting system, like the dry steam method, where instead of just inserting steam, it uses a pressure difference to start creating the energy. And with that, we'll be able to then check out the binary cycle power plant. Alright, lastly, we're going to be going over the binary recycled power plant. This power plant is similar to the flash steam power plant. However, it has some more interesting mechanisms, such as how it takes hot water from under the earth and pumps it through a heat exchanger that then heats another group of water that is then transferred into steam and then recycled back into the system. The hot water also, once it's done heating, is sent back down into the reservoir, which is a pretty interesting design. Due to this, the low temperature water hitting the high temperature water will then create steam and help the turbines move to create energy. And with that, we kind of understand the 3 different ways you can make geothermal heating plants. Also, designs like these can be used for many other different uses for homes and other places. Now, let's go over some uses of geothermal heating. Now, geothermal heating and geothermal heat plants can coincide in the same idea of taking hot air from the surface through steam or water and sending it upward to power or increase the heat for different facilities, buildings, greenhouses, crops, and even fish farms. For example, for heating, they can take the steam from below the surface and use it to heat their house, or pump heat from within their house into the ground to cool the house using geothermal heating and a heat exchanger, which is a really interesting use of the technology. Another use can be seen with greenhouses, where they can take heat from the ground and raise different plants. This is highly useful because in areas with colder climates, such as up north in Canada, Alaska, where it might be harder to keep different farms alive due to the harsh conditions, these heat exchangers within the greenhouses can keep the flowers in tropical weather in a controlled climate, and can work pretty well too. It also can be used in drying different crops that are used. Another great use of it is for heat farms, or heating fish farms, where the fish farms can be heated using the geothermal heat that would connect to the water to temperatures that would satisfy the different fish species who may be in needing for cold bodies of water or hot bodies of water. With this and many other uses, heat exchangers are a very interesting piece of technology. That's also a very interesting thing to make energy with. However, what are some of the problems that could be coming up with it, and what are some of the positives of it, is one area that we should cover. Because can this technology be more efficient and safe than other green energies, or would it be better or not as good? But in that, we'll be going over the pros and cons of geothermal energy. Alright, now we will be going over the pros and cons of using geothermal energy to see how it impacts the world. First, with geothermal energy, some of its positive impacts is that it has a very low emission that can pertain to its byproducts of steam that is used and then recycled back into the system. So not a lot of CO2 is created, and it's very, very helpful to the environment and much more efficient than a gas or a coal plant, and can even be more efficient than even solar and other green energies at times. Geothermal energy also has a shorter emission cycle than coals and gas, which creates, as said before, much less emissions due to the geothermal plants only creating about 38 grams of CO2 EQ, while coal and gas plants take or make about 820 grams of carbon monoxide or 490 grams of carbon monoxide, With this, it can be seen that the total lifetime emissions are very efficient for going with geothermal energy, and it can create power very efficiently. Next, we're going to be going over some of the impacts of using geothermal energy, which can be seen how it affects the environment, us, and even some financial impacts. First, when preparing for a geothermal plant, it can be highly expensive due to the upfront capital costs of drilling, finding the site, and also constructing the different turbines and generators within the plant. However, though it may have a high upfront cost, the plant also has a very low operational cost and also a high capacity of that factor above 90%, which will allow it for a very cheap payback period, especially compared to coal or other fuels, which we will see in the next slide over in a bit. Another downside is that when taking steam from below Earth's surface and re-injecting water and taking water or steam out, it can sometimes cause earthquakes due to changing of the subsurface. This, however, can be avoided by careful planning and also making sure that the facility is built on stable and sturdy ground. Another trouble is that plants can run out of steam potentially if the area's pressure and production declines too much due to the water being tapped too much. Due to this, the water is needed to be re-injected back into the reservoir, which will allow the plant to be prolonged over a longer period of time. However, due to how hot the Earth's surface is, or under the Earth's surface is, it is quite efficient at keeping and maintaining the heat cycles, though definitely adding water will help keep the sites alive over time. Another impact for geothermal heating is that the sites can often be seen to be site dependent. This means that when choosing a site, they must be located in an area that will be able to gain a lot of heat from underneath the surface, taking heat from the underground reservoirs. However, locating these can be difficult due to many local areas that have these reservoirs are often areas of animal habitats or even national parks, which can cause a large legal trouble and often halt different plans for sites from being used. Possible ways to mitigate this is going over what areas are the most cost effective and also working with local officials to see if the plants can be used to also benefit the natural habitats without impacting them. With this, it will construct a power plant that will be very specific to the area that needs to be, while also not impacting any other facility or group. Lastly, another difficulty of constructing the plants is that they can be quite noisy when constructing or running the plant. It, however, remains below the federal pollution limit for sound and is even quieter than some fossil fuel plants, though constructing it in residential areas may have a pushback due to community members living near. Ways to mitigate the concerns for the noise that is made from the geothermal plants in construction is doing different calculations on how much the sound will travel and designing the distance from the facility to local areas so that it would not impact different local establishments and communities that are living near it. Also working with community members to create an understanding of what the geothermal plant is doing and how it can benefit them can also dissuade them from being as opposed to the construction of the plant. Next, we'll be going over the effects of geothermal heating with different wildlife and in nature with ecosystems. With this, we can view how different habitats for animals are impacted through the installation of geothermal heating, where it can change their behaviors, habits, and also mortality. With having to construct plants in these remote areas where different habitats are located, they can disrupt different ecosystems when removing land. The noise created from plants can also affect animals' behavior, and also the sounds can cause them to become ill due to a change in their emotions through stress, as seen where some animals may become sick from a change in their habitats. Also, without careful planning, building a geothermal plant in these habitats can also impact the biodiversity within the area and damage and even remove breeding and feeding grounds for the different animals and destroy different ecosystems for those local wildlife. Implementation of these parameters should be overviewed by environmental engineers that can make sure that the different species will not be as affected and will be safely able to live within their habitats. Lastly, we're going to be going over some of the impacts of costs for geothermal energy. With this, the first is to look over the levelized cost is actually the lowest of multiple different types of energies between wind, hydro, and solar and nuclear, where geothermal is the lowest and has the fastest payback period than other technologies. Also, with constructing the facilities, even though, as said before, that these facilities will often have a high upfront cost, the maintenance cost is rather low for these facilities, and also the cost does not change over time due to inflation for the prices. In addition, there's also many different tax benefits that can be used for implementing these plants due to their high efficient designs, and also can help lower the initial capital costs needed for developing these plants. Some of these tax breaks can be seen through the federal tax credit that can be given to different homeowners that claim 30% of the amount that they spent purchasing and installing the geothermal heat pump systems can come out of their federal income tax. This is very important due to it can lower the amount of money needing for installing and also save you more money over time. The standard, however, has went down to 26% when constructing it throughout 2021, and then 22% if it was constructed between 2022 to 2023. With this, we've now viewed the many different impacts and troubles that may be facing constructing geothermal heating within these areas. However, after viewing many of the different sources and also the pros and cons, it is true that geothermal heating is a very efficient and viable way of creating energy and can be used in many different areas. Though, as seen before, though it will have a high cost for initially creating it, the benefits of the plant's payback period and low maintenance costs will cause it to be very effective and also cost effective for many different constructors. In addition to that, as said before in the environmental section, there must be many considerations for locations of the plants. Making sure that the plant isn't in an area that is a national park or can disrupt the local ecosystem is highly important in order to not damage different wildlife areas that interact within where the plant operates. Also, when choosing a location, it's also important to judge how much sound will be made from the area due to impacts from locals in the area that may also have difficulties with the implementation of the designs. And that, we cover everything and have viewed our final thoughts. I want to say thank you for viewing our video and hope you've learned some of the impacts that geothermal energy can have on people and their surroundings and its uses. Have a nice day. Goodbye.